This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, here we go. So now what we're going to do is we're going to walk through the MAEFAIRS test site. So we will look at the screens in MAEFAIRS, give you some information, show you some changes, some updates that we have for this reporting period. So here we are on the screen. I'm going to go ahead and hit the log out button so you can see the login screen. Now when you get to this screen, it's very important that you use your own username and password. So if you are new to the MAEFAIRS system and you're inherited a password, for instance, please contact Debbie Casey here at OPI, and she can help set you up with your own unique username and password. If you are new, you will need to complete a school finance access request form. Again, that can be obtained either on our website or you can call Debbie and she will help get you set up. So again, some basics about the setup screen. If you have not logged into MAEFAIRS in the past 90 days, you will get a prompt saying that you have not logged in. You'll need to enter your username and your email. You'll need to follow the link in that email in order to get logged in. If it's been some time and you've forgotten your password, if you click the Forgot Password link, again, you can enter your username and your email, and it will send you a temporary password. So let's go ahead and get logged in. All right, there we go. To get logged in, you'll notice that you have some navigation buttons across the top of your screen. If you need to change your password, if you go into administration and change password, simply enter your old password. And also your new password. So I see that we're having some trouble with people that can't hear. We also have a question to repeat where documents are located. So again, the documents for this screen are under opi.mt.gov. If you go to Leadership, School Finance, and About School Finance, the bottom right hand of the page. Is there anyone else that cannot hear? Ginny, did you get this resolved? Are you able to hear? You have the option to connect to audio via computer. So it would be your own audio, perhaps your speakers are muted, or it could be that you need to call in on the phone. Okay. So if we're still having audio problems, please let me know. Otherwise, we'll continue. So once you've changed your password, if you need to, then you're able to go back and you'll be on the main screen again. So here's some basic navigation tips. You can go under data entry. There are a couple of things here that need to be entered. So this is your compensation expenditure report. You can start on this at any time during your budget and TFS cycle. You have until the December 10th TFS and budget deadline in order to complete this report. So again, this used to be done in the end of February. It is now required to be completed by the end of December, or by December 10th. Also under student count, or under data entry, you have student count for A and B. This is your October and February student counts. These numbers drive your district budget. You have state paid tuition. So if you're receiving state paid tuition, you want to make sure that you go in here and submit your claims. Claims need to be submitted no later than December 31st of the year, past the year of attendance. So any students attending in the 18-19 school year will need to be submitted by December 31st, 2019. Then you have your TFS, which has to be submitted by September 15th, along with your budget, which has to be submitted by the same date. So a little bit on navigation again. Here's reports. Reports are all in PDF format. They're really good if you need to print out a permanent record, if you need to verify data, and everything is listed by type of report. So you have budget, and these are the budget reports. There are lots of options when you get into these reports. So you can pay attention to things like fiscal year, whether you're printing a blank report, a current report, or a submitted report. And then the individual items. This will list the districts that you have access to and the funds that you can print. So these are the options in that report. If you choose to use views instead of reports, these are all in Excel format. So these are really good for comparing data. So for example, under student count for A and B, if you want to look at the students that are being included in your MAEFAIRS count, you can print them out in Excel, run a comparable list from Excel from your student information system, and compare them to make sure that the numbers are matching or the students are matching. Also under here we have instructions. So these are your TFS, your budget, your compensation report, and your student count for A and B instructions. They're all included here in MAEFAIRS. You can also find those on the OPI website. They're in different locations here. So if you go under leadership and school finance, under accounting, here's your compensation expenditure report instructions, your TFS instructions. And then if you go under budgets, out of this one. The budget instructions and some spreadsheets are located here. But all of those PDF instructions are in one place for you in MAEFAIRS. All right, so let's go ahead and dive into the TFS. We'll start with step 1. So it's really important to follow these steps. They are in the order in which they should be completed. That doesn't mean you can't jump around. It's just the recommended order for completing your TFS. So if we start with step 1, pre-filled data, this will give you a PDF of all the data that OPI has pre-filled for you. So this is your direct state aid, your quality educator, and this is based upon the payment system. So any adjustments that are made are not included here and must be reported as prior period adjustments in the TFS. On the second page of this is your budget information. So this is all the amounts that we're expecting based upon the A and B numbers that are currently submitted. Okay, back to data entry, step 2. If the district had any budget amendments or transfers that were sent to OPI for processing, those would be entered here. You want to verify that the amounts and that the funds are correct here if you have any amendments or transfers. Step 3 of the TFS is software. So you can see the software that is entered for your district. If there are any changes, simply select that and choose the new software system, and then save. If you ever want to see if there are other districts that are using your software, you can click this All LE's Accounting Package list, and it'll print out the software versions for everyone, and then you can see what districts might be using the same software you are. Step 4, project reporter codes. So each year your project reporter code list is going to be blank. You have two options. You can either enter a new project reporter code. These can be anywhere from 001 all the way through 899. Any of the 900 level codes are going to be OPI only, and 0 is not an allowed code. There are some codes in here that are pre-filled. These are federal grants typically. So you can select one of these, or you can enter your own. So I'm going to enter my own here. You can select a type. It says federal, local, or state. And if there is a project number or a federal number that goes along with that, you can enter that there as well. And then we can hit save, and it'll show up in the list. The other option that you have is to show prior year programs. So these are PRCs that you used in the prior fiscal year. If you wish, you can copy them to the current year, but make sure that when you do hit that copy, you go up here and you hit save as well. Once you've entered all of them, you can click the Print PRC report. This will give you a PDF of all of the project reporter codes that have been entered for the current fiscal year. It's just a handy way to verify all of your project reporter codes at a glance. Okay, so the next step in the TFS is to enter information for your balance sheet. These are your fund balances as of June 30th in the ending fiscal year. So these are entered for all funds, not just budgeted funds. So select the fund. And then you'll enter the amounts based on the balance codes. So here we have cash and investments. So this is money left over in our general fund as of the end of the year. Any taxes receivable. So these are taxes that we're expecting but have not yet received. And this is receivables from other funds. So then we have down here a deferred inflow. So this is money we're waiting for. And then, of course, this will be what we have left over is our fund balance available for budget. You'll enter this for every fund. You can see all the funds. There are toggles at the tops of all of these. You'll notice so we can jump around in the TFS. So here we have a balance sheet report. Instead of having to go up to reports, TFS, and TFS report and selecting this fund, we can simply select a balance sheet report directly from the screen. So it'll show us the prior year value and the current year value and all of the codes for that balance sheet. shows up red. Okay. So after you've entered all of your balance sheet, the next step then is your revenues. So if you notice I'll show you, for example, in the general fund, all of those pre-filled revenues are included here as calculated revenues. So here's your direct state aid. Again, this is based upon the payments. If there are any adjustments, those have to be entered manually. So there are two options when you're entering revenues. You can either import revenues or you can manually enter them. One word of caution, if you import revenues after you've manually entered, anything that you have manually entered will be overwritten by what's in your upload file. So if you're going to import, I recommend that you do that first. Then you can make any modifications by hand. If you're looking for those templates, so if you're looking for the templates, they're on the OPI website under Leadership, School Finance, and under Accounting. So if you click the Accounting button, keep scrolling down, here is the Revenue Upload template. One word about the template, it's very important to make sure that you follow the formatting. So you want to make sure that your LE code is 4 digits and your fund codes are 2 digits. Your PRCs will need to be 3 digits. So when you do your upload templates, it's really important to make sure that they are in CSV format. So here is our revenue upload. So you just select it and click Import Revenues. If you have any errors in your upload, they will all list on the screen. So there will not be a separate file that you can print. You'll just have to look on the screen. It does not have line numbers, but it should have enough information that you should be able to easily figure out which line it is, make the correction, and then re-upload. Again, be advised that anytime you re-upload, it's going to overwrite any information that was previously entered, either by hand or by upload. Once you have your revenues entered, you can print your revenue report. This revenue report will show you both the prior year and the current year value. So if you have something that's really far off, that might be a red flag that there's something going on with your system. It lists all of the revenues, and all of the expenditures, and the changes, schedule of changes. So again, you'll enter all of your revenues for all of your funds. So if you have interest earnings, if you have non-levy revenue, you can enter that. That's project report codes. Here's the revenue code. So here are all the revenue codes. Now you'll notice that for some funds, the revenue code lists will be shorter than for others. The revenue codes available are based upon the funds. So they're all tied to what's available for that particular fund. So once you have your revenues entered, you can go to expenditures, step 7. Notice that we do have a toggle, so if you notice something on your expenditures or your revenues, you can easily flip back and forth between the two. Once you get to these pages, if you see something that's a little weird that you need to fix on your balance sheet, you can also flip back using the toggles there as well instead of going up to data entry. So for expenditures, one of the things that you're going to see here is now school code. We added this last year, but it's going to be really important that you report this information when possible in this year. So we went back and forth on who needed to report by school code. We had originally said schools with populations LEs with populations over 1,000. It is now set on anybody that has a different address for their schools. So if the 7-8 school is 100 Main Street and the high school is 102 Main Street, this LE would need to report by school code wherever possible. If you need to find out where or what funds or what expenditure strings are reportable by school code, you can also find that on the OPI website. Again, under leadership, school finance. If you click about school finance, not on that one. Sorry, leadership, school finance. On the main school finance page, where is it? There it is. ESSA guidance document. If you scroll down below the general information, it's going to list all of the funds and then all of the program, function, and object codes that are reportable by school code. Anything that is included that is not reported by school code will be distributed based upon the enrollment at that school. Again, the same as with revenues, there is an upload function. There is something new with the upload function on expenditures and expenditures only. So now you have the option for uploads. If you have no fund code selected, you can import expenditures for all funds. However, if you have a specific fund code selected, you can then upload individually by fund. So we had some school districts that were saying they were getting too long of an error list when they were uploading all funds. So now you have the option to upload a single fund. Be advised that if you upload a single fund and then select no fund and upload, it will overwrite the single fund that you've uploaded. So we recommend highly doing all of one or all of the other. The other option is if you upload all of them and then notice that you have some errors in one fund, you can go back then and re-upload just that singular fund rather than uploading all funds. Again, be advised that if you manually enter a record and then upload, anything you manually enter will be deleted. So again, import first, then make manual corrections. The same as with the revenue file, it needs to be in CSV format. So you'll see these are all in CSV format. And the templates are available on the OPI page. There's the expenditure upload template. Now the expenditure upload template is the same whether you're uploading a single fund or all funds. So it's the exact same template for both. Once you've entered all of your expenditures, you can print the expenditure report. This is the exact same report that's available in revenues. So you'll see first all of the revenues that you've already entered, and then all of the expenditures. Again, prior year value, current year value. So if you can check these and see if there's a major change. So if you had teacher salaries, for example, last year, that vary widely from the value for this year, you might want to go back and just double check your salaries. There is another report available that is not on this particular toggle. So if you go under reports and TFS, expenditures by school code, you can check all school codes or a single school code and check those expenditures and see how they're allocated by school code. So this particular school district has no expenditures reported by school code. So if you're expecting to have some and you get a blank report, you need to go back and take a look at how you coded your expenditures. Okay, so we can see here that there are no school code expenditures. We want to look at all of them. We can see. And so then we can say, oh, I forgot to enter school code for this. And you'll be able to go back and you'll have to delete this expenditure record and then re-enter it with school code selected. One thing to note, when you're entering expenditures for the Building Reserve Fund 61, you must attach those expenditures to a sub-fund code. So if you have a voted building reserve levy, you need to enter all of your expenditures associated with that levy. If you have a permissive sub-fund, you'll enter all the expenditures connected to that sub-fund. The detail expenditure screen, this is an all fund, so you'll notice this is Fund XX, all funds. These are for federal and ESSA reporting requirements. So if you have any of these expenditures, be sure and enter this information so that we can accurately report this information to the federal government. So there's specific object codes that they want to know more information about. Notice too that there is no upload for this. This has to be hand entered. As with the others, there is a detailed expenditure report. So again, it shows last year's values and this year's values. All of mine are 0 because I've not entered anything yet. So that's what that report looks like. All right, so that was step 8. Step 9, this is a brand new step that we have entered here so that we have accurate expenditure reporting. If you are the prime in either Fund 15 or Fund 82, you need to enter information on the screen, even if you don't meet the reporting requirements of having separate addresses. Every LE still needs to report this information if they're prime for another. So in this case, what you would do, say for example, I am distributing title funds for another school. I'm just going to pick the school or the LE that I'm distributing funds for. So if I'm the prime for Title I for Joliet Elementary, I will assign that to them. Fund 15 requires a project reporter code, so you have to select that. So say we're sharing a special ed teacher. We'll go ahead and enter that teacher's salary, or that portion of salary, and save that record. Now what that will do is when you are reporting expenditures from Fund 15, it will then subtract this 1,000 out of your expenditures, and it will add it to the expenditures for that school district. Because this is technically not your expenditure, so it should not count in your per pupil expenditure report. Okay. So you'll do this if you are the prime in either Fund 15 or Fund 82 for an interlocal agreement. It's important to note that this will validate. So if you do not have this exact string, PRC, program, function, and object, in Fund 15, it will not allow you to submit the TFS. So these amounts have to match in string and also match in amount. Okay, so if you only have $500 reported with this string in Fund 15, it will give you an error when you try to submit your TFS. So then it pushes down all of your other steps. So the next step is your fixed assets. So here's where you're going to enter all the information relating to your fixed assets. So if you have adjustments, additions, or removals, you'll enter those here and save those records. You'll also enter depreciation. So if you have an asset that you need to depreciate, you can enter that information here and save that record as well. Notice there's a fixed asset report here that you can print once you're done entering all of your records. So it shows your beginning balance, your adjustments, additions, removals, and your ending balance. So the question I have here is, please confirm you use the ESSA LE per pupil reporting for Funds 15 and 82 for elementary and high school districts that share federal grants. Yes, that is correct. So if you have a separate elementary and high school and they share a federal grant, whichever of those two districts is prime is going to report under Step 9 any expenditures that are on behalf of the other. So for example, if the elementary is prime for the high school, they're going to enter in Step 9 all of the expenditures that are for that high school. It will then subtract all of those expenditures out of elementary expenditures when doing the per pupil calculation. Okay. So the next step then is going to be your long-term liabilities. So you'll select your activity type. Again, in the adjustments, additions, payments, reductions, this is where you'll enter your net pension for public employee retirement and teachers retirement. And then you have a net pension liability report that you can run here as well. The next step is to review special education reversion. This particular step is for calculating state reversion. So it compares 280 expenditures to what is entered in general fund for revenue code 3115. So if you've not spent enough on special education, Go back and look at your expenditures and see if there's anything else you can code to 280 expenditures. The next step is step 13. This is your excess cost calculator. This calculates the amount a district must spend on a student with disabilities before using Part B funds. This has to do with special education, federal special education. And the person to contact if you have questions is Frank Podobnik. And I've included his contact information in the PowerPoint. So it's included there. If you have any questions or need to get a hold of him, you're certainly welcome to call anybody here at School Finance. We'd be happy to direct you as well. So this is a report, again, in PDF format. Okay, so that's what that looks like. Has all of your expenditures, number of students with disabilities, etc. Here's another new step in the trustee's financial summary. This is your certification of your facilities condition inventory report. So you just need to check one of these three toggles. So either you have completed your facilities condition inventory report, you have not completed it, or you don't own property. So it's one of these three options that you check. We do not need a copy of your facilities inventory report. We just need you to tell us whether or not you've completed or complied with the requirements. So you have to select one of these three options and click Save. You have to complete this before submitting your TFS. So the question I have then is, where do we find a facilities condition inventory report? Well, let's see. So if we go back to the OPI website, again under Leadership and School Finance, it's on the main page. So if you scroll down, here's the school facility inventory and the facility inventories. So if you click these links, you'll be able to find your inventory report. Okay. And again, you need to make sure that this is updated. The requirements there are that that report be looked at and then updated. All right, so we're going to say this district has updated their report, and we'll save that. The next step then is to look at your validation. So here you can run all of your validations, corrective, red warning, or warning validations only. Select the district and hit print. Here are all of your validations. So anything that is under corrective, these have to be fixed before you can submit your TFS. Anything that's a warning, you want to review these and see if you can fix as many as possible. However, it will allow you to submit these validations with these validations uncorrected. Okay. You can get to your individual validation reports from any of the previous steps. So if we're on balance sheet, for example, we can print a validation report from here. It will show the exact same thing as the validation reports in that step. So you have the opportunity to validate as you go along and to fix things as you're working instead of waiting until the very end. Okay, so you get to this point and think, great, I can submit my TFS. Well, you really can't submit your TFS from here unless you are a special education cooperative. Those are the only people that can submit in this screen. If you are a district, you actually have to wait until you complete your budget. So you get to a point where you think you're done, and guess what? You get to go on. Kind of like in The Amazing Race when they get to the end and they think that they've won, and he says, oh, sorry, you're still racing, here's your next clue. So that's what it is for districts. You're not done yet, you get to move on. So the next thing is your budget. So when you get to the budget, you're going to notice that you have, again, a whole list of steps, and you want to follow along, again, in order with these steps, because it's going to help you as you're going through be able to actually complete your information and see true and correct data as you're setting up your budgets for each individual fund. So the first step is to enter your taxable valuation. Now, an important thing on entering your taxable value, I'm going to pick one I haven't added yet, is you're going to have an option for county. So if you are one of those districts that's lucky enough to have more than one county, you're going to select each individual county, enter the taxable valuation for that county, and the A and B for each of those counties. So that should be based upon the total number of students that live in those counties. So this one, for example, we only have one county, so we're going to enter our taxable value. It lists the total A and B for the elementary and the high school. And then we're ready to go on to step 2. So because I do not have debt service, I do not need to enter taxing jurisdiction amounts. But if, for example, switch to a different LE that does. So if we have a bond, we'll need to enter the taxable value for the jurisdiction and the fund balance for the jurisdiction. So for example, if you had a special purpose district that was within the boundaries of this elementary, you would select that taxing jurisdiction and the associated taxable value with that area. Okay, step 3, bus depreciation. So if you have buses, I'm going to go back to the original district. They'll all be listed here. So these are ones that have been listed previously. So these are the descriptions, the costs, the VIN. So you're going to select these, enter your levy amounts, and save. It's important to note that you do not have to enter the maximum levy amount or any levy amount. So this is the most you can levy, but you can levy any amount up to that amount. The total amount you can levy over time is 150% of the original cost. If you need to enter a new bus, you go to the asset page and click add a new asset, and you'll type in the information here and save. Also, if you have an existing asset that you've sold or disposed of, you can check this box here and save, and it will remove it from your schedule. So you can see here some of these have been removed. Okay, so that's what you need to do in that setup page. Notice this is not setting your budget, it's simply adjusting your levy amounts. The next step, step 4, There are some changes to this screen for this year only. So notice that we don't have any reserves set up here, so I'm going to switch to a district that does. What you will need to do on this screen, you'll now have your levy. You can enter your amount and hit save, but it's going to give you an error if you've not already done this, because we need to set up, let me see if I have one. What you're going to have to do is go to the setup page, and notice there's a new field here, levy type. So you'll have to select whether this is a safety levy, a building reserve levy, or a transition levy. This voted safety levy is brand new. Most districts will not have one of these for this school year because the legislation that authorized this was passed just this year in May. You may not have one of these yet, but there is a new option for a voted safety levy. It is a little different than the existing building reserve levies in that the way the existing building reserve levy is set up is it is an amount, a total amount over time divided into equal installments. The voted safety levy is an annual amount which can be based on dollars or mills, and it can be up to perpetual. So an important thing to note when you're adding a new levy, so if you had one of these new voted safety levies, you want to enter your election date. So I'm going to enter a fictional election date here. The start year would be this fiscal year for which you're setting your budget. If it's perpetual, you want to enter a 0. And then this authorized amount is not going to be your total amount like it is for other building reserve levies, but it's going to be the annual approved amount. So enter that in there as well. And now we have both a voted safety levy and a building reserve levy that are both active. So now if we go back to the levy page, we're going to have 2. So we can now set up to $10,000. As with the other levy, you do not have to levy the maximum amount every year, but be advised if you don't reserve that levy authority. So if I only wanted to levy $3 million instead of $3.5 million, I can do that, but I don't get that $500,000 back next year or in any future year. Okay, so we're going to set that there. Okay, so again, remember that if you have a levy existing, before you're able to enter this annual amount, you're going to have to go to the setup page and choose what kind of levy it is. So there's also a building reserve history report, which we get an error when we enter, which is not good. I'll have to find out what that error is. But that will give you a summary of all your building reserve levies and the amounts levied in each fiscal year. Okay, so debt service. So if the district has bonds, you'll want to be able to verify the information on this page. Note that you will not be able to change anything. Okay, on either step 5 or step 6. This is all information that has already been set up. If you have questions about this, you'll want to contact Kathleen Warner. She's the one who manages all of our bonds and bond information here at OPI. There is a report here as well, which is your schedule report. So if you had a bond set up, it would show, for example, all of the years of that bond, all the payments, the interest, etc. Step 7 is your technology election levies. So if you had a technology levy election, now be advised that anything passed after 2013 is now limited to a 10-year duration, and it has an annual authorized amount. So I'm going to put in the authorized amount. You can put in an amount up to 10 years. Now, if you have a technology levy that was passed prior to 2013 and you've passed a new one, you will need to expire the perpetual levy before entering the new one, or put in an authorized amount. So when you ran that election, you should have said whether you're going to expire the old levy or it was going to be a durational limit now, anything up to 10 years. Then you have your new levy. Okay. So then you go back to your levy page. You want to select then an amount up to your maximum amount. As with the other levies, you can levy less than your maximum, but you don't get that levy authority back in any subsequent year. Now the fun part. So when you get into budget, step 8, you're going to need to set a budget for every one of your budgeted funds. So we'll start with general fund. You want to first enter your adopted budget. This is anything up to your highest budget, either with a vote or without a vote. So you can enter that amount here. If you have a vote, you're going to have to enter a record for your voted amount approved on ballot by voters. Okay. Once you set your adopted budget, you're going to do your reserve. So this is your operating reserve. So the operating reserve is up to 10% of the ensuing year's adopted budget, or $10,000, whichever is greater. Just select Add a New Budget Record to enter any budget records. Then you go to your Revenue tab. You'll see that there are calculated revenues for general fund. So this is all the amount based upon your A and B from the prior year. You can also enter non-levy revenues. So all of this information here you can enter. Make sure that you enter all of your non-levy revenues, because this does affect the highest budget amounts. The Summary tab, notice I skipped the Flexible Non-Voted Levy Authority. We're not going to talk about that today, but if you do have any questions about that Flexible Non-Voted Levy Authority, please contact someone here at OPI and we'd be happy to help you. Paul Taylor is really good with this information. Kara can help you as well. If you click then on the Summary tab, this is going to be a summary of everything you've entered. So notice it'll show you all your district levies. So this is going to be your base mill levies, your over base mill levies, all of your unreserved fund balance, your reserve, district tax levy, all that's listed here. You can also print a budget report from here and a validation report. So the budget report is going to list just your general fund, it has all your funding sources and the amounts listed there, all your levies base levy over base levy. So just a summary of that budget information. Notice too that you have fund instructions on every page. So if you click this fund instructions, it'll give you the instructions specific to the fund that you have selected. So instead of looking through the entire budget instructions, you can just get fund instructions for that particular fund that you're working on. So you can work through each and every one of your funds. So the next one then is your transportation fund. Your transportation fund is made up of 3 separate components. So you have your on schedule, your contingency, and your over schedule. So if we start with the on schedule, again on the budget and reserves tab, make sure you select your adopted budget. This is your total of all 3 of those. And then individually, you'll select your on schedule. So this is the amount that is shared by OPI and the county. You can have a contingency of up to 10% or $100, whichever is greater. And then the remaining amount, the difference between your on schedule, your contingency, and your adopted budget will be your over schedule. Remember that your transportation fund budget is all of the costs associated with running a home-to-school transportation budget. Again, here's your revenues. It will automatically calculate. So your on schedule is, again, half county, half state. The remaining amount will be calculated as a district tax levy, unless there are reappropriated fund balance here, which will reduce your tax levy. You can again enter any non-levy revenues that you want to associate with your transportation fund, and that again will also reduce your tax levy. So here's your summary. This mills is the mills only of your over schedule, because again your on schedule is shared by the county and the state, not by your taxpayers. There's a budget report and fund instructions, again specific to this fund. Okay, so the next fund then is your bus depreciation fund. So based upon, again, here you have to select because there is a levy here. You're going to use non-levy revenue to reduce your levy amount, or you're going to increase your budget authority and not reduce your levy amount. So in this case, we've chosen to reduce our levy amount. We're going to set our budget. This is, again, based on what you entered for depreciation. It's going to be a calculated adopted budget. If you need to enter any of these, you can do that. Enter an amount. Under revenues, we can choose to reduce our tax levy by entering any non-levy revenues. If you see anything on here that is not correct, there is a toggle, so you can go back to the bus depreciation page. So if you haven't entered anything in here, you forgot to hit save or didn't enter anything in here, you can go back and do that. And then simply jump back to your budget page. So now you'll see here that we have increased the amount of our adopted budget because we entered that information. And now we have a district tax levy because we have more than our unreserved fund balance. And now our summary looks a little more accurate. Tuition fund. So you can enter your adopted budget. This is not calculated, but your expenditure budget is calculated based on your adopted budget. So if you're using the special education permissive tuition levy, you can enter your budget for that here. Revenues, if you have any non-levy revenues, you can enter those here, and that will lower your district tax levy. Here's your summary that has your mill levy numbers and amounts. Again, you can print a budget report, a validation report, or specific fund instructions. The retirement fund, again, you enter your adopted budget here. If you have any other revenue that you want to enter here, you can do that as well. Notice that this is a shorter list, and the reason is because this is a county distribution. It is not a district tax levy. You'll see that on your summary as well. It does not have district tax levy because this is a countywide levy. Again, you have the same options to print your budget report or your validation report from here. Adult Education Fund, important to note here, you can enter your budget record. If you have fees that you're charging, you want to make sure that you enter that here because that lowers your district tax levy. The summary then will show your other revenue, which is your fees that you're charging, and it will show your total mill levy. You can have an operating reserve up to 35% of the adopted budget or the amount of the available fund balance from the balance sheet. If you're a non-operating district, everything that you spend should be spent out of the non-operating fund. So you won't have a budget in any fund other than miscellaneous programs or debt service. Everything will be done here, including transportation, which is why you see on schedule in the non-operating fund. Otherwise, you have the exact same options, adding budget records, revenues, summary, etc. Technology fund. So again, here you have the option to use non-levy revenue to either reduce your taxpayer burden or to set a higher budget level. You're going to set your adopted budget. Notice this is calculated because it's based on information you entered on the levies page. So if this is not correct and you need to make an adjustment to your levy, you can just click this toggle here. It'll take you back to your levy page. Once you fix what you need to there, you can simply go back to your budget. Again, here you have the option to enter any non-levy revenue. And then you have a summary page. So this is the mill levies associated with that entered tax levy. You have a budget report, a validation report, and again, specific fund instructions. Flexibility fund. The adopted budget is calculated from the prior year fund balance. There is currently no state appropriation for the flexibility fund. So again, this is calculated based on your fund balance. If you have any non-levy revenues you want to enter into this fund, you can do that. You have a summary page which will show 0 for the district mill levies because there isn't currently a mill levy allowed in this fund. It's not on this page, but I'm just going to talk a little bit about the future of the flexibility fund. So districts that are applying for funds for transformational learning, House Bill 351 from this last legislative session, because of the timing, you will not be able to include this levy, this permissive levy, in your 2020 MAEFAIRS budget. Applications will not be available until later in the school year, you'll have to get an approved application and then submit a budget amendment to the OPI in order to be able to spend funds in the 2020 budget year. Beginning in budget year 2021, the district will be able to permissively levy up to 100% of their award. And beginning in budget year 2020, you can transfer funds from any budgeted or non-budgeted fund other than debt service or retirement to implement your approved transformational learning plan. So if at some point in budget year 2020 you get an award for transformational learning, again, you won't be able to use the permissive levy portion for this school year, but you will be able to transfer money from any budget or non-budgeted fund. But you'll have to do budget amendments in order to expend the funds that you're transferring. Okay. Next fund is debt service fund. So on the debt service fund, all of this is driven by information that's entered at OPI. So if you have any questions about how to do your debt service fund budget, again, contact Kathleen and she'll be able to help you with that. Okay, we're going to spend a little bit of time on this building reserve fund because there are some pretty big changes to this fund. So you want to look at your non-levy revenue here. Note that whatever option you select is going to apply to all of your building reserve levies. So you can't choose one option for safety levies and another option for building reserve levies. It has to be the same option for all of your levies. You're going to go to your budget and reserve page. This is a calculated adopted budget, and that's going to be based upon both your voted revenues and your permissive revenues. So we'll take a look at those and see how that plays into the calculation. So for voted revenues, here's your add new budget record. This is your non-levy revenue. Note that this calculated amount here is based on your fund balance reappropriated and a district tax levy. So again, if this district tax levy looks incorrect, you can toggle back to your levies page, and it says you don't have an active one set up. So if you need to set one up, you can do that. So we're going to add a new building reserve. So say we had a building reserve levy that was approved this last election. We're going to say it was authorized for 10 years. In an amount. Now again, if this is a voted building reserve or a transition levy, this is going to be your total amount, not your annual amount. So if it was $10,000 a year for 10 years, we're going to put $100,000 in there. And then we can select up to $10,000 per year. So once we get all of that corrected, then we can go back to our budget page, and you'll see now on voted revenues, we now have a building reserve voted levy in the amount of $10,000, a total tax levy of $46,000. Now the total tax levy comes because I've already entered some of the permissive levy. So the amount that you can permissively levy, this is the small box which started last year, is going to be $10,000 or $15,000 or $30,000 if you're a K-12 district, plus $100 times the district's budgeted A and B. So that amount is listed down here for you. We've calculated that. So the maximum amount that we can have for a permissive levy is $37,700. Now, this year, we are expecting to pay out state major maintenance aid dollars. The amount of money that we have available depends on first, the amount of money that we have available to us, so how much money comes to us to distribute, and also the number of districts that are setting building reserve permissive levies and have state major maintenance aid in their budgets. So I can select and say, well, I'm going to estimate that the OPI is not getting any state major maintenance aid. And I can set my budget that I'm going to just levy my taxpayers for the full amount. We don't recommend that you do this. We recommend that you at least expect some major maintenance aid, even if it's not the full amount you may be entitled to. So to do that, you would simply select an amount or set a budget for an amount less than the size of your box, and it will automatically calculate how much state major maintenance aid you're entitled to. Now, the question then is, how much major maintenance aid are you entitled to? So if you go back to the OPI website, again, under Leadership and School Finance, and on the Budget tab, the General Fund Budget spreadsheet, there is a tab specific to on the Building Reserve tab. It will tell you the amount of state major maintenance aid per dollar of local effort. So you're going to kind of have to guess at how much state major maintenance aid you're going to get, because we're not going to guarantee that you're going to actually get this whole $6,700. Kind of like when you get taxes in, you may have some protested taxes or delinquent taxes. You're not guaranteed that you're going to get this full amount. Okay. So it's kind of a guessing game between, you know, how much you're going to levy your taxpayers and how much you're going to expect the state's going to have available to kick in. If you have any questions about that, certainly contact us here at OPI. We can kind of answer some questions or help out with that. I know Paul and Kara have made some educated guesses about how much money there will be available. That might be a good resource for you in order to determine how much you should expect to get or guess that you're going to get. Okay, on the summary page, you're going to see here how much is permissive and how much is voted. That's broken out for you. You're also going to see how many mills are for your voted and how many are for your permissive. Remember again here, the number of permissive mills is going to be a maximum of 10 or 20 if you're a K-12 district. So this one's a K-12, so we can go above the 10 up to 20. If you are above, so if this were an elementary or a high school district individually and you were above the 10 mills, you would need to reduce this permissive levy and add non-levy revenues in order to fill your box. Okay, so that's all of our budgeted funds under step 8. Step 9 is validations. Again, this is just like in the TFS. It prints corrective, red warning, and warning validations. All of these validations are available on each page individually, or you can print this report. All of the corrective validations have to be fixed before you can submit. And then look at all of your warnings. Try to resolve as many of these as possible, or at least be able to explain why you have not resolved. Once you get to that next step then, and you've corrected all of them in both the TFS and the budget, now you'll really be able to submit. So now you've reached the real end. So here you just select your district and hit submit. Notice we are not allowed to submit because we have corrective validations that have to be fixed first. So it will tell you that you cannot submit and why you cannot submit, what you have to do that. Okay. Then go back through your TFS, resolve all of your issues, and then you'll be able to submit your budget and TFS together. So again, it's not on here, but we'll talk about it a little bit. Some important timelines. So between July 1 and August 10th, you're going to have to publish a notice that you will meet and consider to adopt the final budget of the district. That must include the date, time, and place that the trustees will meet. By July 20th, the county treasurer will provide bond, endowment fund, and cash balances to schools. The first Monday in August, you should receive your Department of Revenue taxable valuation information in the county superintendent's office. By August 15th, the trustees report annual financial activities of each fund to the county superintendent. On or before August 20th, you need to meet to consider your budget. If you do not adopt your budget on the 20th, you continue your meeting up until the 25th. That is when trustees must adopt their final budget. And then within 3 days of approving your budget, you need to make sure that you've delivered that to your county superintendent. The reason that you have to get it done in that timeline is because by the first Tuesday in September, or within 30 days of receiving taxable valuation, your county superintendent is going to report to your county commissioner the final adopted budgets. And then within a few days after that, the county commissioners are going to fix your district tax levy. Okay, so it's really important you get your budget and your TFS information done and done correctly, so that you have the information you need. So I missed a question. I apologize, so I'll go back to that. The question was, I've heard that the facilities condition inventory report is due July 1st. Where do we send that update? So the update is kept on file at the district. You do not need to send a copy of that to OPI. Your auditor will probably ask for that, so make sure that you keep that update in your file, but you don't have to send it anywhere, so just keep it with your own records. The next question I have here is, when can we start entering TFS information? So we're hoping to have MAEFAIRS open by the 3rd week in July. So about the time that you get all of your final balance information from your county superintendent or your county treasurer, my apologies, you should be able to start entering TFS information. The next question I have here, for schools that were originally told they wouldn't have to report by school code and didn't set up school code reporting, can you review how OPI will be allocating these expenditures? Is there anything we'll have to do in fiscal year 19? So those school districts that were previously told they did not have to report by school code because they were under that 1,000 are not required to report by school code this year. It is highly recommended that you do so if at all possible. If you don't report by school code, we will divide them all up by the enrollments in the individual schools as if it's a district-wide calculation. So we'll divide all that up for you based on enrollment counts. Okay. But if there's any way possible for you to enter school code information this year, we recommend that you do that because we believe it'll be more accurate. You will be required to report by school code for fiscal year 20. So you want to make sure you have all that set up for fiscal year 20 so that you have all that ready to go when you submit your TFS and budget information in 2021. Okay. Also at the end of the PowerPoint presentation, which could be really handy for you to have, I recommend that you print it out and maybe post it somewhere in your office, is a list of all the school finance staff, all of our phone numbers, all of our emails, and then specifically the duties that each of us have. And then that list will give you quick and dirty who is available to answer your questions. So you can email or call any of us at any time. We're happy to answer questions. We may direct you to someone else in our office who is more qualified to answer specific questions, but certainly you can start the conversation with any one of us at any time. I'm going to go ahead and unmute everyone at this time. So if anybody has any questions, you no longer need to type them into the chat box, but you can go ahead and ask questions. We're happy to hang around for as long as you need us. But otherwise, if you're ready to jump off, thank you very much for attending today. Again, if you have any questions, please give us a call. We're never too busy or too grouchy or too anything else to answer your questions. So give us a call. We're happy to help you out in any way we can. The only dumb question is the question that's not asked. So please, encourage you to give us a call anytime. Thank you for attending today, and have a great rest of your week. Anybody have questions? Feel free now. Go ahead and ask.
Hey, Nicole, this is Dustin in Columbia Falls. I have a question. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. So the school major maintenance account permissive levy that's tracked with the project reporter code 613, I think.
So Fund 613, yes.
So those funds can carry over from year to year. Is that right? Like if you don't spend
correct,
all the.
yes.
Is there somewhere where that's input into the budget to track what's been unspent to be able to add that to your next year's, allowable permissive levy?
So we don't track fund balance specifically by sub-fund. It's a general fund balance for all sub-funds. So if you're trying to keep track of that individually, you'll need to do so in your own system.
Okay. So it just kind of gets commingled with all the other fund balance in that Fund 61.
Correct.
For the, at least MAEFAIRS perspective. So, okay. Okay.
Any other questions? So you got a couple people hanging out. Any other questions left?
So thanks for your time putting this together.
Yes, thank you.
All right. Thank you all for attending. We will see you next